What are God's expectations for how we as believers should treat those around us? Hi, I'm Pastor Jared Jenkins at Risen Life Church, and I wanted to share with you today just one of my favorite passages that teaches us how to treat one another if we are believers in Christ. It comes from Colossians chapter 3, and it's verses 12 through 14. And this passage means a lot to me because in a time of struggle in my family, when I was seeking to lead them well, seeking to manage my kids well, a pastor friend of mine shared this passage with me, and he said, Jared, commit these words to memory because every time you walk in the door, this is how you're to treat your family. And so I just want to share it with you. It's been such a blessing in my life, and so I encourage you to memorize these verses as well as you think about how to treat people in these days. So here's what it says. Colossians 3:12 through 14 says, Put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other as the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. And above all these things, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. I love these verses because they give us exactly the attitudes we need when we encounter those around us. And I just want to run through them quickly. First, it tells us to have compassionate hearts. I think in these days that means being sensitive to those around us, our family, our kids, our friends, when they are dealing with lots of anxiety and things that we don't even understand, just taking the time to listen to them, caring about the things they are going through, and walking with them as God gives us grace. Secondly, it talks about kindness. Man, this is one of the biggest things that I think has blessed my relationship with my kids, that if I just approach them with kindness, whatever I'm going to say to them, make sure I've run it through the filter of kindness. Even the other day I was listening to something by John Piper, and he said, how many of us sin in the areas of kindness? God here has commanded us to be kind to one another, and so often we are guilty of treating each other unkind. So let's be those that are kind to those around us. Talks about humility. We could think of Philippians chapter 2, where it talks about Christ humbled himself even to the point of death on the cross, to not only the Father's will, but also to serve others. That's what humility is, counting others as more important than ourselves, putting their interest above our own. You know, today that's a really important thing as we're all going through this pandemic. Meekness, this means just not being ferocious when you deal with people, not being so heavy-handed or pushing people more than they can handle. And patience. Oh man, every time I go to the store, I recite this word to myself, whether I'm waiting in a line at Home Depot or Walmart or wherever. Patient. Be patient, right? Let's practice being patient because God has been patient with us. We can be patient with those around us. And then the next part says, just bearing with one another, right? That just says, man, let's just let water go under the bridge. Let's be with one another, knowing that we might not all have our best days at this point, but we can let things go easily. And then this is rooted in what he says here, that we forgive each other as the Lord has forgiven us, so we must forgive each other. Because we know as believers what it means to be forgiven by Christ for our silly things, we can then forgive others around us in the same way. In fact, that's part of what it means to be a Christian, is that we model forgiveness to others because we know what real forgiveness is. And then finally it says, all these things bind it together in love and perfect harmony. Love those around you. Love your neighbors that need Jesus. Love those at the store that need a smile, that need a little interaction, that need something other than a gruff interaction today. Let's put on love for our kids, our family, our neighbors, and it'll be a good thing. And then I didn't mention this at the beginning, but I also think it's cool. Verse 15, it talks about, it tells us have all these attitudes, and then in verse 15 it says, and let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you are called in one body. Man, I want the peace of Christ these days. And so let's work at these attitudes. Let's do it because Jesus has shown these same very attitudes to us. And let's walk with him.